Okay. I think. Okay. I think that's done it. I think we're seeing my BattleNet start. Okay. That was crazy. Let me get this link again and share this out. Wouldn't be an episode without some sort of weird thing happening. Okay, that's supposed to be there. Have to update all of this ridiculousness. Okay. And last thing is get Discord up so that I can update the link for people and check and see if people are back. Live chat. There's this. Okay. Let's get out the... We're live again. Okay. There is social there. Let's go to Discord. Let me edit the message. Save. I probably had to relaunch the screen. Let's see. I'm really excited for this one. It's always great to get a deeper look at the upcoming round and start piecing together the best. Can't wait to hear the discussion and see which players signed off for week 7. Yeah, that might be because of the crash. Okay, so there is that update there. Announcements. Let me edit. Whoops. And edit message. Right here, enter confirm. Okay. There is that. That was weird and crazy. The house show gone crazy. It sure has, Gene. And Gene is back, so we can now...
Recording in progress.
Back to this computer. That was super wild. Apologies, everyone, for the crazy tech problem that we had. With hope, it is all good now, and I need to add another sticky note to my computer that says, hey, stupid, don't forget to restart your computer before the podcast since you leave your computer on all week. That's on me. But, okay, fantastic. As I was saying, get centered into the frame, acknowledge the drill behind me, apologize for the drill behind me. It is what it is when you're installing things in your house. So, all right. The new link is out on Twitter Blue Sky. The updates are out there. Please like and subscribe that link that we can get it out there. And we have the updates out on Discord. So apologies to anyone who's joining us in that little crazy hiccup. I'll be sure to delete the wrong stream from YouTube once it gets all updated in the studio. So yeah, just ignore that one. But we are here. If this is the first time you're joining us, this happens sometimes. We have a little technical glitch, as all things do from time to time, but we come to you live pretty much every Monday to talk about the MLS Fantasy game, the official MLS Fantasy game by Kickbase, but also some of the other games that are out there. We like to have our advice just be as broad as we can to help people who are playing their flavor of fantasy in 2026, and that's exactly what we are going to do this week as well. It looks like everything's back. Some people are back in stream. All the links are updated. The volume, I think, should be pretty good. And the last thing I need to do is get my music loaded. That is the last thing that I need to do. Wait, I opened the show already with that. I already did the music. That's a post thing. So we have the rundown, and we're ready to go. Hello and welcome to the MLS Fantasy Insider, our preview of match week 7 of the 2026 MLS Fantasy season. This episode is brought to you by the number 0, Not only the number of clean goals, blah, 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 blah. Start over. See, I'm all thrown off. I'm all thrown off. Hello and welcome to the MLS Fantasy Insider, our preview of match week 7 of the 2026 MLS Fantasy season. This episode is brought to you by the number 0. Not only the number of goals that LAFC has allowed this year, but also the number of points that Philadelphia has earned. True story. Actually, no, brought to you by the amazing MLS Fantasy Insider Patreon supporters. It's because of you that we're able to keep this project going. Find out more at patreon.com/MLSFI. I'm your host, Reid Connolly from MLSFantasyBoss.com, and tonight I'm joined by my fantasy co-host, Tyler. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining. Thanks for dealing with the technical difficulties we had this week.
Of course.
Yeah, it just is what it is. Well, excited to talk about fantasy this week. It was an interesting past game week that we had with the return of some players coming back from their call ups, some players getting more time than I think a few of us expected them to do, yet still not quite finishing as we would hope that they would with their usual anticipated fantasy form, as we're still learning some of the stats with the various games that people are playing, especially with the official game with Kickbase. Ultimately, I don't know how you take this, and those of you who are with us in chat or are listening to this later, share what your thoughts about this past week were in the player performances right now. And if you're listening, just leave a comment and let us know what your thoughts are of the players as they're coming back from international. For me, Tyler, I'm just chalking this up to the usual because MLS ness of players coming back, minutes being managed, players maybe pushing themselves a little bit far, just some of the uncertainty that happens during these times. Do you take anything more from this weird result that we had?
Um, so yeah, I can hear what you're saying with the international and all that. I think it's a little bit of a mix of things. There's there's some people who, yeah, definitely would be affected by international, but then there's other teams where it's like, what happened? For example, I'm looking at San Jose versus San Diego, and I'm like, what happened here? I know San Jose has been a great team this year, and they had the home game. However, San Diego has also been a very, very strong team and consistently scoring. They were actually undefeated for a very long time, and they put up goose eggs. A goose egg, just like your intro, 0 versus San Jose. And San Jose continues their streak of having only 1 goal against in now 6 games. That's absolutely shocking to me. And not only did San Jose score 0 points, their highest scoring player was their goalkeeper at 102. The second highest was a defender at 23 points. That says a lot about how that game went. Because, like, some of our biggest names, like Dreyer, scored 19 points playing a whole half. Tverskov scored 12. He's a holding mid. He's supposed to get points, and he only scored 12
Yep.
points. And a lot of that is due to the fact that Dua got a red card, but you can't blame it all on the red card. I know it was at 31 minutes, but you still, like, especially like Tverskov, he's a holding mid. He should be getting points even though you guys have a red card, regardless. So, I to me, what I take from that game is San Jose is likely one of the top teams out there right now. As crazy as that is for me to say. At least to me, it's weird to say because of how San Jose has been in the past. But they're a very good team. They don't score a lot, but they got that defensive presence. And speaking of defensive presence, I want to highlight a few teams. There are one, two, three, four, five. There's 6 teams with very low goals against, which is it's under 1 goal against average per game right now. The first one, you highlighted them. LAFC have not
Mhm.
been scored on yet this season.
Nope.
Secondly, San Jose with 1 goal against. Third, the Seattle Sounders. Ashley would love that, and me, but Ashley for sure. Seattle Sounders only 2 goals against. Now I want to asterisk that one because they also have only scored 6 goals this year, which is 1 goal per game, but some of the games have been more than 1 goal. It reminds me a lot of was that 20 I think it was 2018 Colorado Rapids, where they were just like absolutely dominant defensively, but they only
Oh,
would
right.
score 1 goal every once in a while.
Right. Exactly.
Nashville only has 3 goals against. Vancouver has 4 goals against. And then wait for it, Chicago Fire
Mm-hmm.
have 5 goals against this year. Everybody else averages more than a goal a game with at least 7 goals or more against. I I mean, the two shocking ones to me in that category are San Jose and Chicago. But that means you really got to start looking at those guys, not just in Kickbase, but in all fantasy platforms. Look at those teams for defensive records or defensive games, see who they're playing against. And if they're playing against a team that doesn't score very often, you probably want to pick up guys from that defense. And then, kind of on the opposite side of things, teams who've been scored on a lot this year, um, we can all name one, which is Mr. No Defense themselves, Orlando. They have 23 goals against so far. Shocking number.
Yeah.
23 goals against. That's over 3 goals a game average. That's almost 4 goals a game average. That's actually crazy. Next up was Montreal, which is another team you should probably target defensively. Or if you're, yeah, so you want to, sorry, these teams I'm naming, you want to pick teams offense against these teams, and I'll highlight who they are in a minute. Montreal has 17 goals against. Sorry to say it, but Cincinnati has 15
Oh my
goals
gosh.
against,
Yes.
primarily because of red cards, I'd say. Portland has 15 against. Sporting KC has 14 against. The Red Bulls have 13 against, Minnesota 11, and Philadelphia has 11 as well. Now, with that in mind, the teams that I would say to keep an eye on for offense in this game week are ones playing against those teams. One of them is Toronto. They are playing Cincinnati. Montreal and Philly play each other. That's going to be a goal fest or 0 goals. I don't even know. LAFC plays Portland, so already have a very strong offense against the defense that doesn't know what they're doing. Miami's playing the Red Bulls. We've seen the 7-0 game in the past. Probably will happen again. San Jose is playing SKC. We just highlighted San Jose doesn't really get scored on, and now they get to score a lot of goals against SKC. San Diego's playing Mini, and then Columbus gets our most scored on team, Orlando.
Yep.
So, yeah, keep an eye on all those teams. What are your takeaways this week, Reid?
Yeah, that was a great stat breakdown right there. For me, I'm just going to highlight a couple of the, you touched on some. I'm going to highlight a few of the ones that jumped out at me. So I have a note here. Toronto sees red. I mean, they had what, 3 red cards in that last game, or there were a bunch of
Yeah.
cards in that last game. Um, and Cincinnati has been struggling. So my takeaway from that is that going to help Cincinnati? They're on the road, and it, it it's just been struggles. And so Josh Sargent was definitely a standout from that game from Toronto, goal and assist. So as you said, Cincinnati. Some of the question marks there. That Robinson was out last week, will be coming back this week. Celentano's been out for 3 weeks with some leg injury. Is he going to be back? So there's definitely some question marks there. Fortunately, that is the first game, so you will have some time to react if you're playing Kickbase to that lineup if you are interested in some of the players from Toronto, if you're wanting to bet against Cincinnati, which I can definitely understand why it has not been firing on all cylinders. It's a bit of a toss up, so I wouldn't invest heavily in it, but from what I've seen, from what happened last week with Cincinnati and Toronto, I could see how there may be some fantasy interest in maybe dipping a toe into that game. You already mentioned that LAFC is keeps not conceding, and Lloris is number 2 in total kick base points. Also still up there in top 5 with maybe number 2 as well. It's 2 or 3 with average points as well. We talked about that a few weeks ago, maybe week 2 or 3 with Kickbase. Just as we're trying to learn this system, and we're saying our average points and total points almost going to be the same for keepers when you're sort of looking at these players. And for a lot of players, it still is that their average points and their overall total points with goalkeepers is fairly consistent, which is not surprising. Just historically, a lot of the key significant differentiators for goalkeepers was just playing. So just showing up and going there. So we're not seeing as much of the clean sheet element here because people like like Daniel and Larissa are up there, but we also have Takaoka, who is not getting as many clean sheets, are kind of up there in the top as well. So they're not, and Larissa's not number 1 overall, so it's not dominating with the clean sheet. So that is still, that stat is played out true is not there, but that average is still holding up pretty well when you're filtering through your keepers. And as Tyler had mentioned well last week, going through some of the options, it's about actions. How involved are they being in the game? And so having some of those away matches can still be productive. But on the other end, we just saw the massive windfall with Sun and Bawanga in that round. And so that ongoing debate of Bawanga versus Sun is still going. I think a lot of us had leaned into Camp Bawanga. Maybe you've not changed. And then we see Sun drop a hat trick of assists right here. Now, Bawanga benefited from those hat trick of assists, but that's why this conversation still continues, and with very good reason why, I think, from what we've seen. So that's a continuing up there. The I had really thought Nashville was going to do better in this game, and so
Mm-hmm.
this struggle with Nashville is just a fantasy note I wanted to take. Just thinking so much of Surridge leading the Golden Boot, coming in and getting 2 shots, 3 shots. I mean, that's what it was. Is just he wasn't able to produce, and what we need to keep an eye on with that from fantasy for me is it seemed like it was going to be that game against Chicago, but as you said, they're one of the teams that's not allowing, and that's a very important stat that we need to be looking at when we're picking the forwards, because that's directly tying into their actions. And so it's not just did they get a goal, it's not just some of this, but just being denied, being unable to really get into the game
Yeah.
is what's helping them. That's what's benefiting the defenders on the other side with kick base, and that's what's penalizing the forwards from there. So it's a more stat to get into, and yeah, you touched on that with some of your Chicago, but I wanted to mention that as well because that was a big thing that I had. Then finally, I want to ask you, Tyler, what do you think of Miami for fantasy? Because they're tied for second overall in the East. There's like 4 teams on 11 points in the East, so they're tied for second with that. It doesn't seem like they're dominating as much on the fantasy scorecard as we've seen in previous years. Now there's been call ups, there's been CCC, so I mean there's other elements here that we're navigating through at the beginning of the season. But even with that being said, it seems like we'll just call it out. Like Messi's not quite been as blowing people away as he has been. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, heck, even over at SofaScore, he's not even number 1 forward in points scored
Oof.
with this. So I find Miami a pretty shallow well when looking for fantasy options outside of Messi. Not always been the case, but I've not really found some of that consistency that makes me want to go to anyone else but him. But what's your quick just take on how Miami and Messi have been providing for fantasy managers so far?
I think you're basically hitting the point where it's messy or bust with Miami. There's basically no other players in Miami that I would say are even worth considering. I'm kind of going through defenders right now. Their midfield maybe DePaul, but that's like a big maybe. Um, Mikael hasn't been scoring that bad, and he missed one game, which has affected his points. But overall, he's looks like he's scoring like 110 plus basically. So pretty solid there. Goalie definitely not in my opinion. St. Clair is at 311 points, but yeah, that's not very good. He hasn't been playing very well for them. So yeah, I'd say literally if you're picking Miami, you only pick Messi. You don't look at anybody else. Possibly Mikael. That would be the only other person that I would suggest.
Nope, makes sense. But yeah, other than that, I think that was the good takeaways. We had some big scoring games, had some of the regular players who were scoring, but I still feel that some of this is a bit of that layover from coming back from call ups and kind of getting all that stuff managed. So we will see, but that's going to play into our picks. So if you did well in this round, I want to hear it. Hit us up on Twitter, go to the Discord, and share if you did well with your fantasy season, and if there's some players that you are finding who are particularly go-tos, then would love to hear about it and how they've been doing for you. But that's the last week. We're coming up on the next game week, and I like it. I think it's a good one, and there's a very fun week 7 rush challenge that I can't wait to talk about in the second part of the show, which we'll get to right after this. All right, there we go. Got that there. Nice little thing.
I added to your second segment. I don't know if you saw that.
I had not. With that, what did you add?
CCC.
Oh, I see.
Weirdly.
Yes, yes, yes. Good call. Good call. What was I
So potential rotation on those teams.
doing? Post here. Stream. Stream. There we go. Post. Right here. Repost.
Ugh,
There we
man.
go. I don't know if you're on there, so we're just gonna leave it like that. That's what you get for having a weird social media presence. There we go. There we go. Okay, got the social out for the second segment. Again, please do like and share that one equally as much as you do for the main part. Appreciate it to help get the interactions up there. So let's get into it. Hello and welcome back. Let's talk housekeeping going into match week 7. Just first, as usual, we are not yet into the season where we're talking about double game weeks and buys, and so no teams are on a buy, no teams are on a double game week this week, so everyone is in play. Games do start on Saturday, April 11th. And at 1 o'clock p.m. with Toronto versus Cincinnati, as we were mentioning a little bit in the opening. After that, we're just into our usual Apple TV kind of lineup there with our usual 30 games and coming through 7:30s, 8:30s, 10:30s, wrapping things up there on the West Coast. We do have one game on Sunday, April 12th at 7 o'clock p.m. with Columbus versus Orlando, as Tyler mentioned earlier. Pretty good, I think. Some fantasy options there, so we'll definitely touch about that in a second. But that's the lineup there. Please do also keep in mind CCC is back, and so we just finished navigating that, went into call-ups, and now coming back for CCC. There are a few teams involved in this. 4 of them. We've got Nashville and LAFC on Tuesday, so tomorrow, and then Seattle and LA Galaxy on Wednesday. So do keep an eye on those teams. I think that most of them, potentially all of them, will be fantasy targets for managers. So just be aware of any potential rotations that could come. Again, people coming back from call-ups, having MLS games, and rolling right into CCC. So keep an eye on those lineups and those results as you are planning your roster. Other than that, I mean, Tyler, I know we mentioned that there were some red cards in the past rounds, people who are coming back. Any injuries or just absences that you feel are notable that you want to make sure people are aware of before we start talking about picks?
Yes, there's one with a record speed. Wilfred Zaha is suspended on yellow card accumulation.
There we go.
Who would have thunk? 6 weeks in, getting suspension for 5 yellow cards.
Yeah, that's he's going to go for the record. So
Apparently,
I think what Char just got the record, and he's going to be
yes, he
right there
did.
going after him. Yeah,
Yep.
no, that's a good one. Like I said, just check the MLS Disco summary of this. Like I said, there were several red cards last week. I know with the Toronto game, but just check those out, see how that's going to impact before the game starts. Right there. Okay, but let's start talking about the players who are actually going to target for game week 7, starting as always with keepers and defenders. Tyler, who are you looking at?
This was actually just a tad bit difficult for me. It's not like crazy difficult. I felt like the most difficult decision for me was Andrew Thomas versus Daniel, because I think Larice is a little too expensive right now. And for me, it's which team is going to get shot on more often.
Okay.
And that's the team that I would prefer to pick the goalie of. So I personally think RSL is going to be shooting more often. So I'm leaning towards Thomas this week. But Daniel, I think, is a very good option with SKC out there too. For defenders, I really like Tavon Gray. He's had a great season already so far. Even though they are going to Vancouver, he should be putting in quite a bit of work. He is my first chopping block if I were to switch who's in that position though. For my other defender, I last week I had Segura, and unfortunately he didn't start. So I got to look at the next best option which is Porteous for LAFC. So I actually really like Porteous there. Uh People are saying RSL Seattle is postponed.
That just changed? I hadn't seen that.
Did I is that I
Let me
guess
check.
so.
You chat, I'll check.
Okay. And then I was gonna say that I had Lopez for Seattle, but if that's postponed, then I gotta throw in a new person. Um, I am looking at Max Arfston though. I love the matchup between Columbus and Orlando, and Arfston loves to get into the attack. So with Orlando getting scored on quite a bit, I personally feel like it's a very good chance that he's going to get at least a goal, if not more, if not assists in that game versus Orlando. So Arfston is definitely a player to keep an eye on this week.
Yep, nope. Here is the Seattle Sounders home match against RSL, originally scheduled for Sunday, April 12th, has been postponed and rescheduled to Wednesday, September 23rd. The match was
All
moved
right.
due to Seattle Sounders' advancement in the 2026 CONCACAF Champions Cup. So
I
that is an
guess I got to
update
go
right
back
there.
and change a lot of stuff. So
Change up your
while you're
stuff.
while you're talking about your keepers and defenders, I'm going to be changing some stuff on my end.
No, yeah, no. This was posted on Thursday, March 26th. So, um, wasn't totally missed that. Wasn't looking. I'm looking at the RSL news page right now. So didn't see that. Definitely didn't get a notification about it in an app that we're all using. So that's slightly annoying. Yeah, I missed that one. Don't know how
I
missed that one.
also like Daniel Mooney.
And
If you're
you
looking
are
at
in Seattle, so I don't feel bad about this because
that.
this is
Yep.
this is you. So thanks, fam. Um, it's well, that's a good point too, Gene, because I'm also not seeing Thomas like got the little blue plus sign right there. So definitely, it's you know what's probably going to happen is let me check real quick. Nope, not now. There's probably some sort of app update um, that nope. I don't have an app update. Why don't you check for an app update, Tyler, and see if you see it?
I do not have
New
an app update.
complaint unlocked.
I
So
do not.
there we go. But thank you for that mention there. Slight changes to some of the lineups for sure. For me, I mean Thomas was definitely on the list of some of the reason of people that I was considering. Hadn't selected anyone just yet, but he's in that group of four: Daniel, Larice, Thomas, Takaoka, who all have top scores in both their average points and their total points overall. And so I think with any of them, you can't really go wrong if you're just kind of looking for someone consistent who you think might just be there to get you some points this week. Of course, you've got Vancouver, who is playing at home, which is always a nice thing for us to see right there. Seattle is not playing now, so we'll just take them off the list. They're not on this list anymore. Right there. Daniels on the road, Sporting Kansas City, as you mentioned, that could be a good match either way, but some questions about the number of shots that are right there. A couple other names that I'm going to throw out that I think you could consider just from the point of view of some good underlying numbers with consistency and the potential for some actions that could happen. I'm going to have Horvath on there with New York. Um, they're up against Miami. So if they're not going to bleed too much, then I'm expecting there to be a need for goalkeeper involvement, goalkeeper actions, and if it's not bleeding, then that could be a good result. Young team, so I think that is the risk that you have right there. The other one is Stuver, um, and it's the same sort of scenario. LA has been doing well. They've been getting shots, they've been getting results, and so I think that they're on the road to Austin, and I think that that could result for them. We've seen Austin allow and score, and so it's kind of going both ways. They're not really leaning into heavy dominance with their defense, and so I think that there will be opportunities to get some points right there, and then I like it, and so I think those could be some options that you look at if you want to get away from some of those main four that makes sense based upon the actions that they could have in those games. Also, all those teams not impacted by CCC, so a good bit right there. Going to chat, yeah, no, definitely. Gene gonna make sure send in some information about the flagging for those teams and their availability because that's gonna be very important to keep up with. Other than that, oh, sorry, I almost did. It's like twice in a row. I'm almost skipped over the defense right here. Nothing really different from me with my defense. I mean, Gray is still like anchoring my background right there. I'm potentially considering Gutman as a defensive option. I know probably a lot of people are probably reworking. When I was looking at Seattle, I've kind of moved over to Lopez as an option. He's a really budget option, but not in the mix. Makes him just a non factor this week. But I'm considering having Gutman on my team because of reinforced by what you were saying earlier in the show, Tyler, with their defensive success. They're hosting Atlanta, who hasn't been hitting on all cylinders. They've had some success, kind of hit or miss, and so I feel like that's a good match potential for Chicago. And Gutman is not someone who is a stranger to having an offensive potential, and so you've got some upside there with Gutman, and I like that matchup as well. You can look back to San Diego. I think what we saw with them last week was a blip, so we can look back to their go-to players that you have going up against Minnesota. Columbus is the wild card. We know how bad Orlando has been. Columbus has not been fantastic. So if you're going to pick Columbus, you're betting against Orlando. I don't know if that's the best bet because I think we have other teams that could give you a higher upside than Columbus does. But if you wanted to take a flyer, I understand why. I mean, I think you could look for someone like LAFC on the road as a defensive option. I know a lot of people have been going to Segura. He didn't feature in the last match, but you could look at some of those options there. I would shy away from Charlotte. While we do like Kalina at times for his involvement, that their defenders just aren't producing the points. And with Nashville's hiccup last week as well, the only way you might consider that is how heavy they go into CCC with this match because that's going to be a factor in this Charlotte game. But I would tend to lean a bit more towards offensive options with Charlotte than that. But yeah, otherwise some fairly consistent names. And I think that's all I'm going to leave right there before I check over at chat. Nobody else added into the list. So let's move on. I agree, Tyler. Defense has been kind of hard to really nail down this
Yeah.
season. Just trying to really dive into those generating actions there. But let's move on to something that's I think becoming a bit more clear, and those are the midfielders that you're looking at. Who do you like for game week 7?
This was, yeah, I would agree. This was definitely a little bit easier to look through. I I feel like Berhalter is like a lock for everybody's team. He
For
should
sure.
never not be on your team. He is potentially the most consistent point scorer currently in fantasy. So, and that's if you take out his games where he is benched, obviously. Um, but yeah, Berhalter auto lock for me. I really like Sekiris for San Jose. He's been playing well, and as I said earlier, target offenses that are playing against teams that get scored on a lot. San Jose is playing against SKC, so you should definitely grab Sekiris in that matchup. Um, I currently have Royce, but I think I'm gonna be dropping him with the Galaxy playing midweek. And should I drop him, I might just straight up go to 3 mids at that point. So my third mid, I'm leaning towards BL this week as a mid option. He is playing against Nashville though, but Nashville plays midweek, so maybe they won't be as strong defensively.
Fair.
Couple names that I want to throw out there. We talked about DePaul earlier in the segment, or not this segment, earlier in the podcast.
Yeah.
I think he is worth a look at simply because Miami is playing against the Red Bulls and they get scored on a lot. There's potential that DePaul
Mm.
could contribute to some of that success. And then I don't even know what to think of Tverskov anymore. He started off so strong, so consistent,
Yeah.
and he was like the go-to guy. But this game, I'm wondering if I chalk it up to a flute game or if I can even trust Verskov anymore. So I'm really unsure what to do about him currently. Who are you looking at?
So I've got some similar names on the list. So one of the ones you haven't mentioned yet that I'll call out, uh, if you're looking for some diversity with the picks, is Aronson with Colorado. He's got 3 goals in 2 games, and so he's on a nice little bit of form. Excuse me, a nice little bit of form right now. And then going into this game, Colorado is going to be at home to Houston. We've talked up Houston, but playing at Colorado is always just a beast. And so that if you're playing a lineup that has a lot of midfielders, that could be a nice bit of form you want to lean into. Morales is another one that you could look at. New York City going to Vancouver. Vancouver, it's a lot of miles to go, but Vancouver is one of the better defensive teams, but they are not uncracked. New
Mm-hmm.
York has some great offensive options, and Morales has uh, 4 assists in 4 games, 4 or 5 assists in his last 4 games. So he has really been just
Red hot.
producing so well for the team, and he has a good average and some good point potential right there. We mentioned a couple weeks ago that there's kind of shifts around some of the forwards with New York, or sorry, midfielders with New York, but he's had some good consistency there. I think is worth looking at. And then if we're just looking at averages, I mean, you had mentioned DePaul and Tverskov, but like Delgado over for LAFC, he is in top average scores. Last year, he was one of the top players for kickbase overall, and that is because he's just very consistent in the points that we have. And there's nothing wrong, especially if you're working with a budget, to have a guy who's going to give you a good high floor. That is the kind of player that Delgado is. Outside of that, it gets a little boomer busty for me. Like I know some people might look at like Forsberg, but like Cincinnati's not great, and I'm not sure if that's a consistent performance from him. McGlynn has had some ups and downs. He's going to be traveling, so I'm not really sure that's going to work as well. Same thing with Hartel. Mukhtar's got the midweek game. These guys just haven't been consistent for us as we're going. Heel, one that we've gone to last week. I mean, New England one got like 3 goals last week, I think,
Yep,
and they were all
Langoni.
from defenders. So
Langoni is a mid, but he's listed as a forward in the game. He was contributing a lot.
not heal though. So
Yeah,
it's not
actually,
coming from where you
I'll
want.
throw in one more.
Sure.
I'll throw in what's his name? Montreal guy. Uh, uh, Wiki Carmona.
Okay.
I've mentioned him before. He's the playmaker for Montreal, and they're playing against 0 point Philadelphia. So there is a good chance that he could contribute to quite a few points.
The one, I mean, I'll mention it at this point. So this is going into Cincinnati, and last week he lined up in the midfield, but he's listed as a defender, and that's Echenike, Ender Echenike. Um, Great production, great work rate, generates some. He had some more offensive generation. Um, he would be a defender, but as we know from previous history, if that's where the player is lining up and that's where the player plays in the game, that's how kickbase will score them. And so this
Yep.
is kind of one of those like a bridge player, I guess I'll mention right now, of where depending on where they line up with some of the hits to Toronto, that could be um, not really out of position for say, but some like a flex player that could work for you right there, which makes me think of it now as that midfielder talking through there. Um, but yeah, these are some of the players. We will talk about some maybe more budget options because you might want to have those in mind as well in just a few minutes. But I think these are some solid guys to choose from that I think should have some good results. So I definitely agree with these targets here. Going to chat real quick. So yeah, no additions from chat. So let's move on to forwards. Who are you looking at, Tyler?
This felt like honestly probably one of the easier weeks for forwards. Messy, 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 as the commentator says.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
I think it's a toss up between Sun and Bawanga, especially with their midweek game. Will one of them rotate and get some rest on the weekend, or will they play through it, considering that they're traveling? And I just double checking, do they have a home game for CCC? Just want to check. Yes, they are home for CCC. Seattle and LAFC or LA Galaxy, by the way, are traveling to Mexico for CCC. So that could, well, I guess Seattle's not playing, but that could impact the Galaxy.
True, very true.
Just keep that in mind. But anyways, so I'm like a coin flip between Sun and Bawanga. I'm currently leaning towards Bawanga. And then Abu Ali versus Rossi. I think Abu Ali is definitely the one that's scoring most of the goals. Rossi's the playmaker though, so I feel like you got kind of have to trust the playmaker. And then I've loved Nikau. I think he's still a great pick, even though he had that one-off game. But they are traveling cross country to Vancouver. So I'm like, was it just like the homestand scores that he had? And then now that he's back on the road, it's maybe not as strong. And lastly, you mentioned him at the beginning of the segment. If Sargent starts, I think he is a very good option
Yeah.
this week. But it's a very big asterisk on if he starts. If he does not start, I would not pick him. Who are you looking at?
No, very similar names right there. Yeah, Sargent is definitely someone I'm keeping an eye on for maybe that like third flex spot for me. Messi I've got as well. Abu Ali is someone I'm keeping an eye on. I think he's been scoring. I think he's got a couple of goals in his last 2 games, maybe an assist as well, but at least a couple of goals. And Orlando's going to give opportunities. I mean, throw Rossi in the mix as well, but I mean, it's been Abu Ali who's been getting the production, and so the player who I'm going to tend to lean more towards right there. But I'm also going to have to shout out Musa. Musa's been doing very well with his results. They're home to St. Louis this week, and that is definitely a match that they could produce. Musa has 5 goals in 3 games, so
Yep.
and with the hat trick coming against San Diego
Yep.
3 weeks ago, so it's
Ty does good in Golden Boot leader right now.
that's right. It has to be acknowledged. I think we overlooked him for the past couple of weeks. But I think this is definitely a good game. He's 36.7 million, so cheaper than Bawanga that you have right there. Cheaper, way cheaper than Sun. Nikau, a little bit more expensive. I think it's a good shout out as well from him. I am also wary of the road. Dryer had that blip last week, but he has been very consistent for us. And so, is this going to be a time for him at home to Minnesota? I think that is a good match for them. So, I could definitely understand if you want to go back to that Dryer well. Again, some variety. Navarro, he's been up and down throughout the season. He's on a bit of an up right now. Yeah, six weeks in, but he's on a little bit of an up right now. Had some production last week. Going to be hosting the Houston team, traveling to Colorado. Um, More risky, but I wanted to throw him out there because I'm trying to find a couple of people who have been maybe on a nice little bit of a run. See how that works for them. If you don't trust Miami's defense, I mean, Caden Cowell was doing fantastic last week against FC Cincinnati. That could be another budget option if you're looking for some of those players right there. But of course, the cheapest person is Hall by far for New York Red Bulls. Like, I mean, maybe there's someone cheaper, but as far as a guy who is starting, has legitimate potential to get you some goals, you can't really beat Hall. Let's see, I've got him in one of my teams. I'll just look him up real quick to share that cost. Hall is 4.8 million right there. So he is a starter. He's got 2 goals in 2 games. And he had 3 goals in 2 games at the beginning of the season. So without those goals, his floor's not very high. So you do have to have that little bit of an asterisk right there for him. But for that price, if you're playing with a budget, depending on what league you're in, it's hard to pass up that right there. Right, going to chat real quick. Yeah, Gene is going Messi, Nikau, and Surridge. I definitely think I understand all of those picks. They make sense. As we've said, just keep an eye on Surridge for potential rotation and see what's going on there. A little bit more hot and cold. Not as fixture proof as we would hope for someone who's contending for the Golden Boot right there. A lot of options though, Tyler. Are you going to a traditional well for your captain pick or something different? So who are you going with?
I think I'm gonna rely on Messi this week as my captain.
Okay. I just asked chat, and so we'll see if they can respond in time. But I'd agree. It with that young team that the Red Bulls have, much respect to them and what they've been doing. But I think that just makes sense for this week. He is the only one to go to. Let's play the fun game again. If not Messi, then who?
I think if not Messi, it's between Abu Ali and Berhalter.
Yeah, I would lean Berhalter, which I didn't mention him in the last segment because you did, and yes, I totally agree. He is like auto include. I would lean Berhalter just because I am still slightly scared of Columbus because here we are like Orlando is bad, Ali is on form, but Columbus has struggled. They're definitely they're not they are just above where I would put like these are teams to target. Because I don't consider them complete dumpster fires. But at the same time, if this ended up being Columbus gets beaten at home by Orlando, I'd be like, yep, sure. Yeah, okay.
I understand.
Yes, I understand. That's it too. So that's the only reason why going with an Ali captain. I understand the reasoning, the logic. It's a fun pick. It's too rich for my blood, but I mean, Berhalter would be is an amazing option, and I think legitimately gives Messi a run for his money. Really, just looking at the matchups with this one, and I rank New York higher, and so I guess they're both playing against New York. I rank New York City higher than the Red Bulls in the difficulty of how they're going to be on the road. So that's what
Yep.
that is. Going to check. Yep, Gene is lockstep with us as well. Messi, then Berhalter right there. I think it makes sense. It's great seeing Berhalter so competitive um, with the fantasy options right there. Okay, we're going to round out with a quick discussion about our Match Week 7 Kick Base Rush Challenge. And this is a good one. It is a $150 million budget. So, like, the almost the lowest budget you can have. Maybe the lowest they'll give you in the Rush. But $150 million budget. 2 players per team. And you are locked into the 4-3-3 lineup. This one's tough. This one's going to make you look for those budget options. Tyler, how are you approaching it?
This was definitely a little bit tough to make for sure. I started with the players I want the most, which are Berhalter and Tsakiris. And then I was like, okay, I can save money on defense. Now I got to figure out what I want to do on offense. So my forward options so far are Guilherme Hall up top, and then my little splurge is on Belonga right now. I think they have a very good chance at getting a lot of goals this weekend again. And they're not traveling too far. They're going from LAFC at home, like their own home stadium on Tuesday, up to Portland. That's not very far of a travel. So I think Belong is worth spending a little bit of money on, but then I had to save a lot of money elsewhere. So my mids are Chakiris, Berhalter, and then I ended up picking up Mehmeti because he's only 1 mil. So I grabbed him in my midfield. On defense, I grabbed Harrington, who's 4.1. Tavon Gray is my little splurge defender at 13.7. Daniel Mooney at 12.7. And then Adjamang for Charlotte is 1 mil. And don't ask how I'm finding these guys, but I have found them. And he's been scored on in the last 2 games and still been 100+ points. So maybe there's a chance there. For my goalie, I ended up going with Fieri for San Diego, 1.7 mil, and he's been pretty consistent except for that 1 week where he sat out with their game against Dallas. So not too worried about that defensively.
So I will tell you that I made this harder than it needed to be because I made the rundown, I looked at the lineup, and when I sat down to actually think through this, for some reason I had it in my head that I was limited to one player per team. And so I was trying to build this team with that in mind as I was going through and doing this. And so that was very difficult. And so I'll share with you some of the players that I settled in on. Because of that, and that's just to supplement what you had already listed right there. And so I had Neelis down as an option because not because I really had a lot of faith in the clean sheet, but because he was 9.7, and I really wanted to shave some points somewhere, and that's where I was looking at defense to do it. I was really hoping that my they wouldn't get hit too bad, maybe would generate some points. He did okay against Cincinnati, but that I could save some face right there. Because of other players I picked at the time, I added in Hageland, who I'm probably going to reconsider, but he is sub 10 million. And so potentially not a bad option, though, depending on if Sargent starts, how the rotations happen with Toronto. If Celentano is back, we'd expect to have Robinson and Miazga back into the lineup. So could be a better defensive outing for Cincinnati on the road, and sub 10 Hagland is definitely a good option. Other similar players right there. Going up into midfield, I was looking at Osorio as a potential option. 12.4 million, has had some decent um, floor with his points. I mean, he had a good first round with an assist. He had a decent floor with his last game against Colorado. Been rough times in the middle. Last year he did a little bit better, and I was leaning on that Cincinnati game that they may struggle some, and midfield tends to be the place where Cincinnati struggles the most. And so I thought that's potentially where Osorio could um, do better. Um, I mentioned Delgado before. I definitely thought about him. 20 million, maybe too much if you're depending on your budget. Um, if you're going to splurge on someone like Berhalter, then that's going to eat in there. He's like, what, 33 ish?
He's a lot.
Yeah, he's 30. He's 33, so that hurts there. But you could save some money with maybe looking at someone like a Delgado, hoping for that consistency there. Uh, Sarkis is just he's like sub 8. That's wild. I mean, he's got to be an auto include for your team right there. I have Hall up top, as I mentioned earlier. He's just so cheap. He's not as cheap, and so he's on the chopping block for me. But I have Prince right here right now, and I know that Montreal is struggle. So just stay with me for a second. He has 4 goals and an assist in his last 4 games. He's been getting pretty good minutes, and I know that last week he got 31 points, which was awful. But Philadelphia has no points. They have no points, and this is a home game for Montreal. Not just a home game for Montreal, the home game. It's their opening season. Their home opener is now because of winter. And Philly is struggling, and so I think that's a good game for him. He's got some history of being able to produce. Philadelphia has been struggling. That home atmosphere, as we talked about last week, the home field advantage. 22 million, again, maybe too much. Maybe you can find a better guy for 22. Still working some things around. I mean, even with Guillaume is 19, and so that's another guy in the mix for would you rather have him instead. But I'm seriously looking at Prince for some of that potential that he has right there. So several options right there. Definitely are looking for the budget conscious players this time. And when in doubt, I think looking at the player average scores are really going to lean into how you can try to find some of these diamonds in the rough. I wish desperately that I had a filter right now to filter by the price of a player to really help me narrow in on some of these options instead of having to scroll endlessly through everything. So Shallowy, that's a good shout out, Gene. What do you think about Shallowy?
I think he's definitely a good option this week. I'm not sure how his role is going to change with Sargent there, but probably, actually, yeah, definitely not bad.
Yeah, no, that's a great shout out there, Gene, for Shallowy. So it's yeah, this I love it. I love the rush. I know you all probably get sick of me saying it, but like this has really injected some just fun each week into the game of like how it's different, what's going to happen, how to approach it. It's been super a lot of fun. This is hard. I don't like the $150 million budget. 200 would make it slightly better with this. I know that's part of the challenge, but this is rough. This is rough, especially trying to find the players with the filter options that we have. So with hope that'll change. Feedback that we're always providing. So the kick base team has been great and responsive to take that. So not saying it as a dig, just saying it as this like honest user feedback of the game, which we're all experiencing. So yeah, that's That's what we have. Would love to hear next week how people approach this. If you have any other budget players that you want, check out the differentials article. Maybe you'll find some budget players there this week. We shall see. Super fun. But thanks for joining us tonight. Let's wrap things up, Tyler, with our plugs. Who do you want to call out, or who?
Let's plug Lowe's for helping me fund the boxes that I am packing for
Not a
moving day.
sponsor, just super helpful for Tyler.
Yep.
Did you actually buy boxes, or did you like get them from the back loading dock?
Bought some.
You see, that's I remember
Rookie
moving.
move.
No, 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 no. I don't know if they do that anymore. Like I remember when I was like first moving, just like going to the back of a loading dock of a local big box store and being like, "Y'all got any boxes?" I don't know if they
Hmm.
do that anymore. Um,
I'm
but
not sure.
I mean, maybe it's easier if you have like a local small town grocery store or something. Maybe that's the option. But no, I just save them all now, and I just like keep the boxes and put them in the attic because like I don't know when I'm going to move again. With hope, not for a long time. Um,
Yep.
Tangent. Otherwise, for me, I'm going to give a huge shout out to the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord community. People are great, keeping up the conversation. Lots of different options, lots of different ways to communicate this year. So definitely, if you have not, head over to mlsfantasyboss.com/discord to check that out. And while you're there, check out the great articles for mlsfantasyboss.com. We've got Tyler and Team Differential who are putting out some great content, and we've also got Ron who is putting out our fantasy physician. This little articles there, a little bit more longer form, some deep dives, really great responses from that. So check out Ron's musings as well over at mlsfantasyboss.com. You can catch the podcast as well. If you don't catch it live, you can catch it over there as well. So
Hmm.
thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties at the beginning, but we got through it, covered some good players, and so with hope, as always, good luck.